Hi guys, it's Shadow. Uploading high-quality audiobooks for you, it's very time-consuming and hard-working process. So please support me so I can keep uploading for you. This is how. You can donate directly through my PayPal or Ko-fi. You will find links in the description. Or you can join our Telegram channel where you will find all paid audiobooks that we provide. Also, you can make requests and you will find proof of payments from our plus 200 paid members. If you can't support me financially, just like and subscribe our videos. Thank you guys, your support means a lot. And as always, enjoy Shadow. Chapter 141, Farewell. Chapter 141, Farewell. The war was over. Moreover, it was ironically finished in a very short time, akin to when a downpour abruptly stops, leaving those who hadn't managed to shed their tension feeling awkward. However, even after the rain stopped, puddles were still formed from leftover rainwater. And just like that, the disaster of war still lingered throughout Griffin Kingdom and Mariah's Great Forest, leaving behind a bitter scent of blood. Meanwhile, Romerzen, Heroine, and Bomanables from the Griffin Kingdom were the first to be arrested and taken away. They were likely headed to the Griffin's execution grounds. According to what they confessed to me when I directly confronted them in the forest, this invasion was one of the negotiation points with the German Kingdom, which was beyond the desert. Since they already had no way to stay in the Griffin Kingdom, the three of them planned to use the Mariah's tribe to occupy part of Griffin Kingdom's land, expecting that the German Kingdom would follow suit. However, the German Kingdom deemed the situation hopeless and unilaterally severed ties with the three of them, leaving them abandoned. It was ridiculous to think they left the confines of Griffin to negotiate with German using the Mariah's tribe. In fact, I thought it not only foolish but also surprisingly audacious of them. They might believe that this incident occurred under their own initiative, but there was no way Dante's spy, the Dark Mage, wasn't involved in this matter. Perhaps that man led everything, right? The Dark Mage affiliated with Dante couldn't overcome the suffering and injuries caused by his burnt limbs and had now died. I also collected his soul along with Voxer. It was to prepare for the battle against Dante. Dante is moving too quickly. The German Kingdom's invasion plan by itself wasn't surprising because it was part of the main episode. However, it happened faster than expected. At the very least, it should have happened around the second semester of Arya's third year when the story of the Queen of German, which was the starting point of the episode, began. However, it was only the second semester of Arya's first year. It was ahead of schedule by almost 2 years. I knew that from Dante's side, as they were already aware of my existence as the Soul Whisperer, were now making various moves. However, I didn't expect individuals like Horua and Voxer, who weren't even mentioned in the game, to appear. This means that there might be more powerful individuals I am not yet aware of. I slowly walked out of Mariah's Great Forest, pondering what in the world was happening on this continent. Iluania had already left first to receive protection, and now I was leaving the aftermath for Gloria to handle. Perhaps because I came out a little later, it was already the break of day. The air, once damp due to the rain, now felt slightly refreshing. Deus! Swish! Something flew past me. Huh? I was so bewildered that I couldn't help but subtly exclaim before I even realized it. When I glanced back, I saw the dark spiritualist floundering in midair. Thud. Afterwards, a heavy impact suddenly struck my body. Unlike when it was the dark spiritualist who tried to tackle me, this time, I could feel a distinct weight and warmth. Master Bastard. As Findine rushed at me, I could smell the faint scent of a cigarette. She wrapped her arms around my neck and both legs around my waist, clinging tightly and causing me to stagger. While the sudden welcome slightly took me aback, Findine buried her head against my chest and murmured softly, "Well done, you've done really well." "Damn it, Master Bastard, massacres aren't your style. They'll handle that kind of thing for you, so you should just sit back and cross your legs while enjoying a warm cup of tea." Upon hearing the rare tone of relief in her voice, I could feel how worried she was about me. Was that why? Somehow feeling awkward, I still spoke as coldly as usual. "As long as the tea is not brewed by you." "Ah, bullshit." In response to my words, Findine lifted her buttocks and leaned forward. Since I was already exhausted and wasn't particularly strong physically, the sudden movement caused me to tilt backwards and fall. Thud. Although we both fell, Findine placed her hand behind my head to cushion the impact, ending on top of me. Findine slightly shifted her body and looked down at me with a playful smile on her lips. "Wait for it. One day, it'll surely make you can't live without my tea." Sigh, move away. When I sighed irritably, Findine once again laughed and lightly rubbed her buttocks against my waist. "Is it up?" That was the end of it. I used my mana and pushed her away, causing Findine to immediately roll to the ground, letting out a miserable groan. "You have crossed the line. You will get a pay cut this month." Tui. Dirt got into my mouth. Tui. What do you mean by a pay cut? I got a salary deduction after rolling in the battlefield? Just like that, I stood up, brushed off the dirt on my body, and was once again about to move forward. However, this time, a woman in a black robe stood with her arms crossed, glaring at me. You know I spotted you first and flew over, right? Yes. Originally, I should have been in that position. What does that even mean? Arg. It's so annoying. Despite saying that, she subtly approached me and stretched out her hand. I felt a sense of reluctance and tried to step back, but the dark spiritualist huffed and took a step closer, maintaining the distance. Thud. It was a touch that had a sense of weight. Perhaps she had become quite skilled at manipulating mana. I could feel a slight weight and warmth coming from her hand resting on my head. You did really well. And thank you. You just need to keep being there for me. Continue to remain aloof and beautiful. I saw a faint smile beyond her black veil. I could sense that the dark spiritualist was also concerned about me, though in a different manner than Findine. Not as a dark mage, but as the soul whisperer. As I stared at the dark spiritualist, a sudden thought occurred to me. Since the dark spiritualist was here with me to see the end of necromancy. Once she resolved her resentment, she too would rest in peace, right? She was someone who would eventually leave my side. For now, I would continue walking towards the truth of necromancy. While I still didn't know what lay at the end, there was one thing that was clear. Parting ways with the dark spiritualist at that moment was inevitable. In a way, I see that this journey of mine could provide you with some comfort. Was she surprised by my words? The dark spiritualist's eyes trembled for a moment. Then she smiled faintly and nodded. I suppose you could see it that way. I didn't feel the need to continue the conversation any further. Another inexplicable emotion was welling up within me. But since I was already mentally exhausted, I averted my eyes, not wanting to tire myself any further. Even though Saintess Lucia soon came to greet me and heal my wounds, I was still too exhausted. So, without even eating any food, I quickly returned to the tent after briefly washing up and closed my eyes. Was it because I entered Mariah's great forest immediately after finishing the memorial service? The sense of fatigue had piled up more than I had anticipated, and it now washed over me. I wasn't sure how long I had slept for, but I could tell that someone had taken care of me diligently while I was asleep. Despite sleeping on the tent's bedding, I couldn't feel any unusual stiffness in my waist, nor was it too cold or too hot. It was a proper rest, as if I had slept and woke up in a mansion rather than the damp discomfort of the tent. Because it was bright outside, as if the sun had just risen, no lamps were needed. I could see that no one was inside the tent. After getting up and tidying my hair quickly, I stepped outside to be greeted by the intense sunlight. How many days did I actually sleep for? It was strange to see sunlight and feel this way to this extent, as if I had turned into a vampire. My stomach also grumbled with hunger. Oh, you're awake. Findine, who was sitting outside the tent smoking a cigarette, which she probably borrowed from someone else, spotted me. To regain my senses after waking up, I used my mana to blow Findine's cigarette far away. She looked at her own hand holding the cigarette, wriggling it with a dispirited expression. Damn, I just lit that. Ignoring Findine's complaint about only having taken a puff, I asked her, how much time has passed? 2 days, master bastard. All right, 2 days. Fortunately, not as much time had passed as I had feared. Then I spoke again. Where is Iluania? Iluania and Sevilla are both fine, so you don't have to worry. You should eat first. Look at your sunken face. Although Findine's words were probably spoken out of concern, I shook my head. No, this is more urgent. There was still one soul left whose resentment hadn't been resolved. Hearing my response, Findine sighed heavily before loudly shouting. Hey Owen, get the food ready. We're going to eat soon. Yup, got it. Owen's voice came from somewhere. It seemed like he was still afraid of Findine. Let's go. You should finish what you need to do and then go eat. All right. Findine guided me into a large tent. Inside it was Iluania holding Sevilla, with the dark spiritualist protecting them from the side. You're awake. Iluania greeted me warmly. Rather than this, I wished I could provide her with a better place for her postpartum recovery. However, it seemed like she had waited for me to wake up. That was fortunate. Iluania, there is one soul that has remained in this world in order to protect you and this child. Yes, I know. She also protected me at the hotel. And soon that woman will fall into a deep sleep. She would protect Iluania until she saw her child enter this world safely, letting out a smile. That was the promise made between me and the woman with burns on her body. Would you consider letting the woman hold the child, even if it is just for a moment? I politely requested permission from Iluania, the mother, as it seemed only natural to do so. Iluania smiled and nodded. Of course. I immediately looked at the dark spiritualist. The reason she was here was none other than to ensure that the guardian spirit did not vanish before I arrived. With the help of the dark spiritualist's mana, the female guardian spirit revealed herself again. She, who had directly faced Horwa's flames to protect Iluania, had lost her horrendous, resentful appearance from the past. Now, she was barely able to maintain consciousness, her body dripping with cold sweat. I reached out and welcomed her into my body. It was just like when I allowed Owen's grandfather, Oster, to possess my hands. This time, I entrusted my body to her, the guardian spirit. She then slowly took my hand and reached out towards the baby. Iluania handed over Sevia, who was wrapped in a swaddling blanket. Once the child was in my embrace, my hand moved across the child's forehead on its own accord. Yeah. Sevia laughed as if there was something funny about it. Then, various emotions that were not my own started spreading inside me. Relief, gratitude, joy, happiness, and regret. Ah! The woman's voice echoed within me, not from the pain of half her body being burned, but from the regret and determination of wandering in resentment after losing her child and dying. Was my child also this beautiful? I lightly nodded upon hearing her tearful voice. Certainly. I had become one with the emotions I felt spreading within me. Thank you. With that, the woman who fought for her child even after death slowly closed her eyes and finally entered into Eternal. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 142. The Forbidden Book in Loburn. Chapter 142. The Forbidden Book in Loburn. Yawn. Findine let out a yawn while driving the carriage. Glancing around, she realized that they had somehow arrived at the Loburn Academy. It wasn't specifically an unpleasant place, and in fact, it even held some fun memories. But at the moment, a sense of annoyance was pricking at Findine's head for no special reason. The professors had already been waiting in line to greet them as the carriage entered the academy. And among them, the dean especially was making a fuss about hosting a party to welcome the heroes who were returning from the war. Unfortunately, the soul whisperer Deus Verdi, the protagonist of the day, was not in the carriage. And that was precisely why Findine wasn't in a really agreeable mood. Where's Deus? Erica, who was waiting along with the dean, asked with a puzzled expression, and Findine replied curtly, I don't know. Then, after collecting Iluania's and her own luggage, Findine walked towards the entrance of the academy. Despite looking severely injured with the bandages wrapped around her body, there was no hindrance in her movements. Groan. The gaze of the professors naturally shifted to Owen, who belatedly got off the carriage with his luggage and melodica. The boy also had bandages on his hands, but he smiled awkwardly and answered the professor's questions. He said he needs to stay a bit longer as he has to apologize and take responsibility for the souls in the Marias Great Forest. Take responsibility? The information was not clear, but Owen didn't bother elaborating any further. The last person to get off the carriage was Iluania. She wasn't carrying any luggage, but in her arms was her precious new family member. Since the professors were aware that she was the pregnant maid who had accompanied Deus, they congratulated her on the birth of her child. However, Iluania simply thanked them and headed straight to the hotel she had previously stayed at. Since postpartum care was also important, the hotel had been preparing related services in advance. Findine decided to follow her for now because it was uncertain whether the hotel building was still intact in the end. Only Owen was left behind with the carriage. Despite harboring some regrets, the professors had no choice but to return to their respective places with dejected expressions. Owen too headed straight to Deus' room. After neatly arranging Deus' luggage, he took out the melodica he had been carrying on his back. Then, as he blew into the instrument, it produced a sound when the keys were pressed. As he had performed for a long time at the mountainside village, his fingers hurt even when playing the relatively lightweight melodica, but the boy continued to play it skillfully. Gradually, a woman appeared. She wore a black robe covering her eyes, with the lower part of her face concealed by a semi-transparent black veil. She was the dark spiritualist he had already met several times whenever he performed. Even though the music stopped as he removed the melodica from his mouth, Owen's spiritual eyes had developed enough to allow him to converse with her to some extent. Dark spiritualist, so you came along. Yes. Deus told me to do so, didn't he? Like Findine, the dark spiritualist was also in a sullen mood. Deus had insisted on handling it alone, so he also sent the dark spiritualist away. And in case someone secretly disobeyed him and stayed behind, Deus instructed Owen to confirm their presence upon his arrival at the academy. I am his master. Why did he issue orders to me? Even though she was complaining, Owen realized that she was obedient, so he decided to remain silent for now. There was no need to provoke the already upset woman by saying anything else. He told me to check on you daily. Are you okay? Sigh, all right? The dark spiritualist sighed. It was Deus' wish to spend some time alone with the souls in Marias Great Forest. Hearing that, the dark spiritualist couldn't help but make a complex expression. It did mean that Deus, who was on the verge of crossing a line, had regained his principles. However, did he really need to bear that burden alone? Wouldn't it be better to do it together? Weren't they soulmates? Even the dark spiritualist herself was actually a soul as well. Ugh, so annoying. With a swift turn, the dark spiritualist disappeared. Sigh. Seeing that, Owen wiped the sweat from his forehead and breathed a sigh of relief. The soul whisperer must be really exhausted. Owen also overheard that this war was a scheme cooked up by an organization of dark mages to discern the true intentions of the soul whisperer. Since Owen was unaware of more details, he simply stretched and headed out of Deus' room for now. Since Owen was staying in a spare room in the first-year male dormitory, he planned to go and rest in his own room for a while. Because in the absence of Deus, he didn't really have anything to do either. Even though he didn't intend to take one before, it was truly a sweet break. He had been through quite a lot this time, so he deserved to relax like this. Since the students were still attending their lectures, Owen quietly returned to his room after showering and fell into a pleasant sleep on the soft bed. No, I swear it wasn't me. Because of the loud voice filled with frustration and injustice coming from outside, Owen's eyes fluttered open. Despite his sleep being disturbed, he didn't feel tired. When he looked out the window, the moon was already up. Having slept quite well, Owen stretched and stepped outside. Two students were standing in the hallway. The first-year male student was defending himself with a resentful expression against the other student, who appeared to be a second-year male. You were the one who used it before me. So, you are obviously the culprit. No, I'm telling the truth, it wasn't me. This is really unfair. If you're asking me if I used it, I did. But why would I doodle on it? What were they talking about? Owen stood on the tip of his toes to check the situation. It seemed like there was something wrong with the book in the hands of the second-year student. Curious about what book it was, Owen craned his neck. Hawa. The young boy toppled backwards as his face turned crimson. It was a book with pictures of women. And it was not just any picture book, but a book with naked pictures of a certain woman. The second-year student quickly turned his head due to Owen's overreaction. Then he glanced between the book in his hand and Owen, then turned to flee with embarrassment. Anyway, you don't ever do this again. It's for everyone's use. Leaving behind a rather righteous, thunderous criticism, he fled from the scene. While sighing with relief, the first year approached Owen and extended his hand. Thank you. Thanks to you, everything got sorted out without me getting hit. He was actually right, I was the one who did that. I get more horny when I doodle on the body. What? Huh? Oh, you're not from the academy, are you? That's why you don't know. We refer to it as the forbidden book in our secret code. Perhaps feeling good from escaping the threat of his senior, the male student began pouring out information no one had even asked for. You too. If you need it, just let me know. No, I don't need it. More importantly, how can students buy such things? For the boy who had spent his whole life with the piano, it was a whole new world, one he couldn't understand at all. When he exclaimed in surprise, the male student shook his head while laughing. Of course, we are not allowed to buy them. The forbidden book is handmade. We have the artisan at our academy. Felt like his head was reeling. Anyway, if you need it, come to me. Good things should be shared. We're both guys, aren't we? The male student grinned and winked before childishly running off down the corridor. The boy momentarily felt shocked and dizzy. He then clenched his fists. Students should behave like students. It was a phrase Deus Verdi often repeated. Owen then returned to his room and played the melodica, summoning the souls that were still lingering at the academy. It was Owen's unique method of gathering information. Oh, risque drawings? They're not only circulating among the guys but among the girls as well. I know there's one person who draws them. They even put marks on them. If you're a student, you should study. What a joke. Did you know there's a request counter? If you write a note and put it in a certain book in the library, they will draw what you want. Drawings? Oh, I saw one kid drawing something weird recently. That person. Upon hearing the testimony of the last ghost, Owen changed directions. The place he went to was the first-year female dormitory. Although it was late at night, he could see a girl with blonde hair wearing a white beret sitting on a bench in front of the dormitory and sketching. PP Princess? Yeah, that's right. That girl has been drawing weird pictures every day. After pointing to Eleanor Leden Griffin, the ghost abruptly vanished, as if passing the buck. Should he just run away as well? Owen contemplated briefly, but after remembering Deus Verdi, he took a deep breath. If it were that person, what would he do? What would he do if he found out that a student he cherished was the one circulating obscene material referred to as the forbidden book? It was hard to even imagine it. He would probably be quite furious and scold her severely, right? I have to stop this. And since Deus wasn't someone like him who could only see ghosts when performing, but someone who could see ghosts all the time, he would likely learn of this information soon. With such determination, Owen approached Eleanor. What's going on? Eleanor glanced at Owen briefly before turning her focus back to her drawing. She didn't even spare him a glance. From the perspective of someone walking the same path as an artist, the concentration with which she moved her pen was impressive. However, can you show me your drawing? He first had to confirm it. It was a statement he made after mustering up some courage. Eleanor looked at Owen, who had abruptly asked her to show him her sketch, with suspicion. However, she recognized him as Professor Deus' apprentice. Sure. She turned the book around with ease to show him the sketch. It was a night sky with a beautiful moon. As someone who lived in the land of artists, Claren, Owen could immediately see how much effort she put into her drawing. Wow. Even he was surprised by the skill. Seeing Owen exclaim with admiration, Eleanor asked carefully, "Is something wrong?" "No. I'm sorry. I have disrespectfully misunderstood you." "Misunderstood? What misunderstanding?" Eleanor slowly set down her sketch beside her on the bench and crossed her arms and legs. Even though she appeared to be slightly older than him at first glance, as her gaze shifted and the atmosphere began to settle into a solemn one, an indescribable aura of authority as a princess began to overwhelm Owen. This was the princess of the kingdom. The sudden change in atmosphere felt akin to an assassin retrieving their hidden weapon. Perhaps speaking to a princess like her would help resolve this matter easily. Thinking so, Owen raised his voice slightly and spoke. "Recently, someone at the academy has been drawing inappropriate pictures and circulating them. So, I thought I'd try to find that person before the Soul Whisperer returned." Huh? In an instant, Eleanor froze in her place. The dignity of a princess, which she had displayed just moments ago, disappeared, and she reverted back to student Eleanor. "Oh, is that so? Williel, there are really strange people out there. But Haddis not. Your Highness?" Even to the innocent Owen, her manner of speaking seemed suspicious. Just then, Arya emerged from the female dorm entrance. "Eleanor, look at this. If you darken the iris and blur the focal point, it looks like he's obsessing over something." Eleanor frowned as she saw the drawing of Deus Verdi in Arya's hand. "I have told you before. Do not scribble on my drawings. Sneak, sneak." While Eleanor got annoyed by Arya's tendency to add her preferences to her drawings, Owen had already started fleeing. Could it be that she was drawing strange pictures based on the Soul Whisperer? Thinking that he had to inform the Soul Whisperer at all costs, Owen ran. Oops. Along with Eleanor's sigh, Owen's legs floated up into the air. Oh. Surprised as his body began to levitate from the ground suddenly, Owen naturally drifted back towards Eleanor. Well, you see, it seems like there's a misunderstanding." When Eleanor smiled awkwardly and said that, Owen blurted out tearfully, "I'm sorry. I promise I won't tell the Soul Whisperer. Please spare me." "What's this? Isn't this the kiddo following the professor around?" Arya, who approached them, made a dumbfounded expression before hastily hiding the drawing. "You hid it so quickly." "Huh? Why don't you just go and announce to everyone that you are drawing Deus?" "No, I mean it's just such a groundbreaking discovery." For once, Eleanor's bitter tone rendered Arya unable to protest at all. However, she tried to offer a solution. "Shall we just knock him out to make him lose his memory? Why is everything you do so inappropriate? Then, how about we say that it's only you, the princess, who is drawing Professor in that manner?" "Why are you talking about that? This kid can hear that, you know. Also, don't you like it too? Thanks to your early education in sexual education, this humble commoner has seen a new world." Despite the two seemingly engrossed in their conversation, Owen knew he would never be able to escape from them. The moment his body slumped in despair, he once again found himself floating. It felt as if someone had grabbed him by the collar and lifted him up. Huh? What? This time it wasn't Eleanor's doing, so both of them were surprised. Owen was also taken aback. However, amidst his surprise, he blurted out due to the familiar sensation. "Are you the Dark Spiritualist?" Though he wasn't particularly close to the Dark Spiritualist, Owen felt like he had met his. "Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys." Chapter 143, Arrested. Chapter 143, Arrested. Owen blew into the melodica and started playing the instrument. However, before he could fully immerse himself in the performance, the Dark Spiritualist had already revealed herself with arms crossed, staring down at the three of them. "Is she here now?" This feels somewhat like a typical ghost summoning in a specific location of an academy's rumored horror story. The Dark Spiritualist openly displayed discomfort in response to Arya and Eleanor's inquiries. Although these two people couldn't see her, Owen hoped they would tread carefully, as he knew how displeased the Dark Spiritualist was at the moment. "So, why were you captured by them?" To respond to the Dark Spiritualist's question, Owen hurriedly let go of his melodica. Well, actually, Owen began explaining the reason why he came here. Naturally, Arya and Eleanor, who were beside him were also listening, their expressions subtly changing. When Owen finished the story, Arya immediately turned to look at Eleanor with an expression of disgust. Hey, did you really? I did not. Eleanor immediately refuted. However, Owen, the dark spiritualist, and Arya all looked suspiciously at her. Eleanor, clever as she was, knew the quickest way to clear her name of the false accusation. I do not draw any man other than Deus. If I were making adult magazines, wouldn't I have to draw many men? Well, that's true. Arya nodded in agreement. Eleanor felt the urge to punch Arya in the face because although the latter knew everything, she still acted like that. Let's say Eleanor is innocent for now. However, we still need to catch that bastard. Arya crossed her arms, appearing to take the matter seriously. Eleanor also had a change in attitude as she solemnly nodded. That's right. If he's not just circulating obscene materials but also producing them himself, there might be students who've been harmed. As expected, you catch on quickly. It must be because you're a princess so wise. If he produced his own material, it was natural to think that he might have involved people around him to create the obscene art. Following that line of thought, there could be students who have been harmed. Whether male or female students, if they found out their faces were illegally used in obscene materials, they'd likely be shocked. Hey, shouldn't we also apprehend them? A single remark from the dark spiritualist had accurately pierced through the brazen duo. Owen did think it was probably because these two had done something similar, which was why they could figure out such exploitation cases first. However, I should tell the Soul Whisperer about this later. Owen had resolved himself to survive this incident, and even if he died and became a spirit, he would definitely let that person know about this. Should we try searching in the art department, maybe like a club or something, to check if it's a student drawing? Suddenly, it felt like they were forming a patrol squad to conduct an investigation. Both girls, as well as Owen, felt a boost in their morale. There's a certain book in there that you can use to leave letters or request notes. They accepting requests for drawing obscene materials through letters? Why is it needlessly romantic? Despite complaining, Arya and Eleanor immediately moved their feet. Even though the library was probably closed since it was late at night, it didn't stop them. Owen, you should go with them too. Ah yes, understood. Owen immediately followed the dark spiritualist's instructions. The dark spiritualist also followed suit with a subtle expression. Then they arrived at the library. The door was locked, however. Arya swiftly picked it with a lockpick she pulled from her pocket, opening it in just 0.7 seconds. Why do you even have that? Of course, it's a basic necessity for adventures. If this were a game, she would have already mastered the lockpicking skill, as showcased by her adept hand movements. Although Arya had returned to being an ordinary female student, she hadn't completely forgotten what she had learned back then. The library interior was dimly lit with natural light, filled only with silence. Despite having seen various yokai, Owen still found the late-night library a bit scary. Feels like there might be a treasure chest here. Feels like the perfect spot for studying alone. Don't you think? Should we ask someone in charge for a spare key later? Arya and Eleanor showed profound reactions. Especially Arya, whose eyes seemed to brighten as if she were exploring a dungeon. They made Owen, who was already scared of the library, even more afraid. What are you afraid of? The dark spiritualist entered the library while passing by Owen. Well, what she said was true. The only thing that could come out of a place like this was ghosts, but wasn't one already right next to him now? After gaining courage from an unexpected source, Owen calmly took a breath and stepped inside. They say that if you put a letter in book 666 they'll make a related book and put it next to it. That's quite a sense for picking numbers. Eleanor clicked her tongue at the number that was blatantly chosen. Arya quickly rushed to the bookshelf and returned with a book. Here. As soon as they opened the book, letters poured out in a flurry. Seeing the considerable amount, it seemed like the rumor was quite famous among students. Wow, what's this? He'll probably pick one from these and make a drawing, right? Arya and Eleanor each picked up a letter and unfolded it. Sneaking a peek at someone else's sexual fantasy was more interesting than they thought. Owen, do you feel it too? Huh? Owen was also curious about the letters, but he immediately snapped to attention at the dark spiritualist's sudden words. You still have a long way to go. Wondering what she meant by that, Owen tilted his head. At that moment, the two girls exchanged the letters they were reading. Hey, this is yours. Here, a gift. Although they intended to playfully joke with each other, after exchanging counterpunches, the two girls were, what? Me? Both were surprised and immediately read the letters. Indeed, they found their own names written there. Please draw Arya with dog ears and tail in a submissive pose. I request a drawing of Eleanor being treated like an assistant, with a collar and getting spanked. Which bastard? Who the hell dares to behave so insolently? Both of them were quite angry. Could this be considered as reaping what they sowed? I guess. Although he didn't know about the kind of drawing they made of Deus, at the very least, The two had also done something similar to this. Nonetheless, after seeing the content of the drawing request, Owen felt that these people had crossed a line. Even if the requester were anonymous and thus couldn't be identified, it would be hard to overlook this matter when someone attempted to commission such drawings involving the princess of the kingdom. At that moment, the dark spiritualist spoke to Owen again. "You still don't feel anything? Should I play a tune?" No need. He's finally appearing now." The dark spiritualist pointed to the distant darkness with her chin. There, a shabby man wearing glasses, holding paper and a pen, was trudging toward them. A ghost? The translucent figure was clearly a ghost. That man seems to be the author of the forbidden books. With arms folded, the dark spiritualist shrugged as if it were trivial a brief amusement while Deus was absent. "Sigh. It seems like he has some resentment remaining. Since handling him will be hard for you, they'll take him down for now. When that person returns later, he will put him to sleep." "Ah yes, understood." The dark spiritualist approached the man. And upon seeing the dark spiritualist, the man opened his mouth wide, drooling. He immediately began to draw something with enthusiasm. "You're a magnificent beauty. Please let me use you as a model." Crash. The dark spiritualist's mana wrapped around him like a coil, restraining him. Normally, she wouldn't have acted so aggressively. However, don't seek mercy when he's not present. It will only sour my mood. After bluntly subduing the author of the forbidden books, the dark spiritualist briefly glanced at Owen before leaving. Seeing the man writhing on the floor felt oddly pitiful. "There is also someone who has requested a drawing of Professor. I'm definitely going to find that bitch." Wow, is this the kind of thinking that comes from the heads of the academy students who are supported by the royal family? Should I report this to my brother and have their support cut off? The two clicked their tongues and expressed annoyance at the students' sexual creativity. Meanwhile, Owen still thought that the two weren't that different from the requestees, but he didn't bother mentioning it. Well, the case has been resolved. The two were surprised by Owen's words. When asked what he meant by that, Owen scratched the back of his head sheepishly. It was a ghost who drew the forbidden books. The dark spiritualist caught and subdued him, so you no longer need to worry. The two somehow felt disappointed that the incident ended in a rather anticlimactic way. It was also quite disappointing that they couldn't deliver the blow themselves since the creator was a ghost. However, perhaps now that they had captured the ghost, all the forbidden books he drew would also disappear. But how deep is the resentment he harbors that ordinary people are able to see the forbidden books? Owen clicked his tongue, sensing the obsession of the man who poured his sincerity into creating the forbidden books. Enough for even ordinary students to see them. A few days later, while the case seemed to have ended without major issues, Arya Rias and Eleanor Lyddon Griffin received a notification after Deus Verdi returned. "Bring all the drawings you have made so far and come to my laboratory now." Wawa. Art. It was Owen who cleanly apprehended the last. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 144. The Best Necromancer. Chapter 144. The Best Necromancer. It had been a week since I had returned to the academy from Mariah's Great Forest. As I came back quietly, some students and professors didn't even realize that I had returned. However, I made it known that I had indeed returned during my lecture, which I resumed the previous day. As they were upset that I sent them home first, Findinay and the dark spiritualist irritated me slightly with their blunt reaction upon my return, but I decided to let time sort it out. More importantly, there was another thing that needed to be addressed now. Huff. Right now, Eleanor Lyddon Griffin was in my lab, tearfully writing a reflection. There was a sign hanging around her neck that read, "I'm stupid." I didn't know why she was wearing something like that. Was it perhaps a joke by Findinay? Well, it was not wrong, so I just let it be. Then, another female student approached me carefully. It was Arya, who had her long black hair tied up, probably because it was summer. She cautiously handed me her sheet with her reflection written. She also had a sign hanging around her neck. "I'm sorry for behaving like I'm in a rut. Take that sign off." Regardless, asking a student to wear something like that was a bit too much. Upon hearing my words, Arya smiled brightly as she immediately removed the sign, tearing it in half. "It's Findinay's doing." As expected, I sighed and began reading Arya's short reflection. I deeply reflect on the incident of drawing an unpleasant picture resembling Professor Deus this time. Actually, I was not the one who drew the picture, it was Eleanor who did. Omitted. But down the line, wouldn't this also become a bittersweet memory of my school days? Just like how Professor wants me to, am I not living faithfully as the student Arya Rias? A curious and innocent child. Scrunch. As I read it until there, I found myself crumpling the reflection before I realized it. Glancing beyond the crumpled ball of paper, Arya scratched her cheek with embarrassment. "Please look at me." She winked while acting cutely. Normally, I would have calmly let the student act cute. However, Write another 2 pages. Yuwa. Since it really soured my mood, I immediately doubled the length of the reflection she had to write. Arya trudged back to the seat next to Eleanor and began writing her reflection again on the paper she received from Owen. She glared at Owen, the informant, but as soon as I glanced at her, she withdrew her gaze and focused on her reflection, like a puppy running away. It seemed like it was going to be a long day. Frankly, it felt uncomfortable that they were drawing weird pictures of me. However, both of them were my precious students for now, and they were still young, so I decided to overlook it. At that moment, Iluania, who was sitting beside me and flipping through the drawings, let out a murmur. I had told her to stay at the hotel and rest, but she insisted on coming all the way here with Sevia to visit. She was flipping through the pictures Eleanor had drawn while holding her child in her arms. Then, finding something amusing, she chuckled to herself. Perhaps because they're still kids, their imagination is lacking. You're much more impressive than this. Pardon? What did you say? Both Arya and Eleanor immediately stared at Iluania. I also frowned and glared at her. Covering her child's ears, Iluania smiled awkwardly. Oops, an old habit of mine. Sai, stop looking at them and go burn it outside. Findine is also getting ready. All right, understood. Gugu gaga, Sevia. Shall we go? Holding Sevia tightly, Iluania carried the drawings and walked out. I sighed and turned to look at the woman who shared the lab with me. Since there were an unusual number of people present in the lab today, I was worried that Professor Felpetra would be bothered by it. However, with her pink hair tied up messily and her lips sealed tight, she was completely focused on her work. According to Erica, her lectures were so advanced that students found them difficult to understand at times. That was how much of a genius she was in her field. Other than her actions of erratically waving her arms around, which made her look no different from a mad scientist or a serial killer, it was hard to see her as anything else. But Professor Fell sighed wistfully, and since I had finished my tasks, I approached her slowly, wondering what troubled her. The 2 female students glanced at me briefly but immediately averted their gazes back to the paper when I glared at them. Is anything troubling you? Ah, Professor Deus. I must have disturbed you. To apologize. Professor Fell scratched her head apologetically. After reassuring her that she didn't need to apologize, I simply stood by her side and said so. It was truly a sophisticated imitation body. I was amazed at how it was made. From what I heard, it was something akin to alchemy. Although I was curious, I had no intention of prying into someone else's personal research recklessly. As I stared intently at the imitation body she had created, as if embarrassed, Professor Fell fidgeted a bit before answering. Actually, the process of making the imitation body itself isn't that difficult, but I don't have anyone to help me test it. I've tried it myself, but I feel like using 3 arms would feel very different compared to what actual users would experience. I briefly wondered about where she would attach and use the prosthetic arm, but if that was the issue, I immediately thought of someone I knew who would be able to be of some help. I think I can help. Huh? Really? Just wait a moment. After saying that, I headed out of the lab. Please keep an eye on those 2 until I return. Ah yes, understood. Owen, you as well. If they harass you, inform me immediately. Yes, Soul Whisperer. The 2 girls, who were looking forward to taking advantage of my absence, became dejected, and the light in their eyes went dim once again. These kids, it seems like I had been too lenient with them. Not only that, but they were also doing weird stuff with my face. Well, to be precise, it was with Dea's face, and that didn't exactly make me feel very unpleasant. Although I took a bit of time outside, I was able to find someone to help. Why are you here? The dark spiritualist was sitting on the rooftop railing of the academy, looking at the surrounding scenery. Although her behavior was unusual and I was confused about that, she still didn't look at me. Sai, can you not let it slide this time? It was really something I had to do alone. After forcefully using the souls in Mariah's great forest, it was naturally my responsibility to seek forgiveness from them. So, there was no need for the dark spiritualist to accompany me. What would you do if a student of yours commits a serious offense? You will ask them to bring their parents, right? You will also contact their family, correct? Aren't I in a similar position? When you make a mistake, don't you think that I also need to bow my head along with you? You do not need to do that. At my words, the dark spiritualist turned her head abruptly, descended from the railing, and approached me with long strides. Unlike her usual self, she seemed incredibly angry this time. Who taught you necromancy? You did. If it weren't for me, you would have still been struggling with the basics of necromancy, let alone mastering it, and you would have been devoured by Lemegeton, you know that, right? The dark spiritualist's tone became quite harsh. I thought time would help soothe her anger, but it seemed like the situation had only worsened. Her anger seemed to have been festering inside. Isn't it within my capacity to do that much for you? Am I not in a position where I can accompany you to kneel down and apologize? The dark spiritualist closed the distance confidently, clenched both fists, leaned forward, and glared at me. From her attitude, I felt as if she was saying, I dare you to say something. However, I still opened my mouth. Yes, you are right. Excuse me. She must have not expected me to accept it so easily. Despite the puzzled expression on the dark spiritualist's face, I continued speaking. If you want to think like that, of course you have every right to do so. At some point, the dark spiritualist had somehow also become quite significant to me. She stammered in surprise. However, please do not misunderstand. It is not because I ignored or distanced myself from you. In fact, I had instructed her to leave first because I didn't want her to suffer like that just because of me. Ahem. Okay, I understand. Feeling awkward, the dark spiritualist cleared her throat nervously and averted her gaze. Though barely visible from behind the semi-transparent veil, it seemed like she was forcibly stopping the corners of her lips from rising. After giving her a moment, the dark spiritualist finally regained her composure and asked with a brighter mood, Did your apology in the Great Forest go well before you returned here? I did my best. Not everyone accepted it, but I paid a suitable price for that. Currently, I was fine, thanks to Saintess Lucia's treatment. However, when I had emerged from Mariah's Great Forest, I was covered in blood and lost consciousness because there were no souls who would graciously accept being used by force. And I also gained something as well. Gained something? When the dark spiritualist stared at me in confusion, I slowly stretched out my hand. In it was a burning red orb. While some might consider it to be a mere ember, it was not the same for the dark spiritualist. Harua? Her eyes widened in surprise. I nodded slightly in response to her. He has weakened considerably, but since guardian deities are spiritual beings as well, I was able to collect his soul. Initially dumbfounded by my calm response, the dark spiritualist eventually let out a bitter laugh. From a saintess to a demon lord, and now a guardian deity who has lost his land as well. You're truly remarkable. You forgot another one. What? The greatest necromancer on this continent is also with me, right? When I glanced at her with a faint smile, the dark spiritualist gaped for a moment before straightening her shoulders and exclaiming proudly, Of course, no doubt. I have no intention of stepping down from the top position. I will continue to keep moving forward. Indeed, keep working hard. Anyway, how about we go now? As I turned around, the dark spiritualist followed me in a good mood. Fufu, you were unusually kind when you came to find me today. I should get upset with you more often. Her humming response surprisingly didn't put me in a bad mood either. Although it wasn't my intention, asking her for a favor while in this state didn't seem difficult. After returning to the laboratory, I pointed to a lone artificial arm lying there and said, Put it on. Professor Fell said she needed an actual user. I thought you would probably feel something similar since you don't have a physical body. The dark spiritualist, who had been staring blankly at me, slowly clenched her fist. And then, as expected, she burst out in anger. You fool. You deceived me. You used sweet words to manipulate me. Scum. Garbage. Necromancer. You too are a necromancer. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 145. Preparations for the Festival. Chapter 145. Preparations for the Festival. Isn't that enough? Outside the academy at a dessert shop downtown, Findine was eating cake using a fork before she became extremely annoyed and just picked it up with her hand. When I asked her this, she responded flatly. Well, I guess it's not as good as I thought, huh? Findine possessed numerous talents. Aside from her combat ability, she also excelled in leadership, possessing the charisma capable of commanding a revolutionary army. Furthermore, her beast-like senses were something that could only be called a talent. However, personally, I suspected that her greatest talent lay in her ability to get on my nerves. Do you know how many slices of cake you just stuffed into your mouth? Of course, I don't know. Look at the number of plates next to you. There were stacks of plates piled high. I gazed at Findine, who brought to mind a scene I could only have witnessed in a sushi conveyor belt restaurant in the past. She then took a bite of the chocolate cake that was in her hand before responding to my statement. TSK, I think grilled meat suits me better. Huff, alright, it was my fault to expect common sense from a wolf. As I sighed and rose from my seat, Findine followed suit while smacking her lips. After paying an amount that could hardly be considered the price for a meal, we left with some takeout cakes, and Findine giggled for no apparent reason. No longer wanting to be swept along by her, I decided to change the subject. Honestly, I was surprised. I did not know you would choose to eat dessert. Huh? Actually, I didn't really want to. Thud. As I stopped in my tracks and stared at Findine, she also stared back at me patiently. Given her sour mood after I requested her to leave me alone in Mariah's Great Forest, I sought to appease her by asking what she wanted, to which she demanded dessert. And now she said she actually didn't really want to eat it? Did she know how much money I just spent on her? If Dia found out, she would have immediately thrown anything she could get her hands on at me and called me a crazy bastard. I just felt this was the most efficient way to empty your pocket, Master Bastard. Nevertheless, wow, Master Bastard, you really did spend that much on me. I feel touched now. Should I do something for you in return? Findine elbowed my side teasingly. Yeah, she was actually this kind of woman from the start. No, maybe I should just see her as a beast instead of a woman. Alright, let me ask you to do one thing. Oh? What is it? Are you feeling pent up? Do you need me to help you out? Just shut that mouth of yours for a bit. When I spoke through my clenched teeth, Findine immediately pretended to zip her mouth shut. I felt slightly relieved once she quieted down. After stopping by the hotel where Iluania was staying at, to deliver the cakes, I headed back to the lab. Wow. Thank you. Isn't this patisserie really expensive? It looks delicious. After also sharing the dessert with Owen and Professor Fell, I grabbed the remaining cake. Hey, where are you going? I want to give this to someone. Also, did I not tell you to keep your mouth shut? Shit, what a fucking narrow-minded jerk. Alright, I'm sorry. Should I put a gag in my mouth? I heard that's your thing. I ignored Findine's words and stepped out of the lab. My destination was Erica's lab. Of course, I didn't come here without reason. I had something to ask her. After knocking, I stepped inside, causing Erica, who was working, to flinch slightly. I cleared my throat and signaled the surrounding assistants, and they quickly abandoned their tasks and immediately left. Excuse us. Have a good time. We'll be back when called. Although there was a strange consideration in each of their words as they left, I paid no heed to it. Ahem, what brings you here? Erica casually asked, pretending not to have heard the words of her assistants. I held out the small box that contained the cake towards her desk. It is nothing. I just bought this. Oh, for me? Is there anyone else here other than you? Erica was surprised. She didn't expect me to bring her something like this out of the blue. However, she smiled softly and accepted it. Thank you. Suddenly, a brief silence filled the room. Since there was no need to waste time, I got straight to the point. I heard that you have some dispute with the Bright household. Seeing Erica awkwardly scratching her cheek before nodding, perhaps I got too straight to the point. When I told them I wouldn't marry Gideon, they immediately kicked me out of the household. But it's all right, I'm old enough to stand on my own, aren't I? Erica shrugged nonchalantly in response. Truthfully, she was indeed leading a more confident and independent life now than before. This was the Erica Bright I knew, with her back straight alongside a confident gaze. A truly beautiful woman. However, their stance must have changed after the fall of the Zironia household, right? The financial blow the Zironia household suffered from after having to erect the memorial monument, as well as making donations to repent for the massacre of the Sedima residents committed by them. On top of that, they also had to join the front lines against the Marias tribe, which had declared war in the name of Sedima. I heard that even before I arrived, the soldiers of the Zironia household had nearly been wiped out, and Gideon Zironia was hospitalized due to injuries. That's right. Because of that, my household has been trying to take me back. I received a letter a few days ago. Erica opened a drawer and took out a letter with the insignia of the Bright household. But it's not because they genuinely need me. She was initially only seen as a daughter to be used for political gain. Therefore, this was not because they felt gratitude towards her for preventing the irreversible mistake of marrying her into the Zironia household. It's more like because right now I am engaged with you. No, to be precise, it is because they need you. My position as the Soul Whisperer had become even more solidified through this war. So, in short, the Bright household sought to ride on the coattails of the Soul Whisperer. I see. Knowing this was coming, I responded calmly. Set a time, let us go together. Huh? Erica had a puzzled expression as she couldn't understand what I was saying. For her sake, I explained it once again. Let us go to the Bright household together. I also need something from them. No, wait. Huh? Really? But if it is just the two of us, it would raise suspicions, right? How about disguising it as a formal meeting between families? I will also call Darius to come with us. Erica's cold expression crumbled in an instant, replaced by shyness. She couldn't keep her hands still. Then what about the annulment letter? She asked cautiously. I am sorry, but we need to put it on hold for a while. However, you can hand it back any time after we return from your place. Ah, Erica's expression turned cold. I pretended not to see the bitterness on her face as I spoke calmly. Please understand. All right, I got it. I don't really want to go back to my family's main house, but I do want to see those nobles groveling before you. After that, I simply said goodbye and left the lab. I felt sorry for the dejected Erica, however. I don't want to tie her up in this life as well. From what I heard from Arya, I ended up marrying Erica in the first round. It was not out of love, but simply because I needed her. When I was sick, she took care of me and eventually proceeded with the marriage. This time, I could at least do something for her, right? Of course, it wasn't just for Erica's sake. It's also because Dante's movements are highly suspicious. They instigated incidents earlier than expected. In the game's original storyline, Dante's name wasn't even supposed to appear during this period. Their activity seemed to have increased due to my presence, so I also had to make thorough plans and prepare accordingly. What a headache. There was only one reason why Dante was giving me a major headache. It was because their ultimate plan might truly be the way to save this continent. In fact, during the first round, Arya failed to prevent Dante's leader from dying. As a result, we couldn't prevent the boundary between life and death on the continent from collapsing. I need to find a way to replace their plan. Until I found a recourse, I had no choice but to leave Dante as a bunch of variables. When I returned to my lab with such thoughts, I found that it was quite noisy compared to when I left. Findinay and Professor Fell held a paper that resembled a notice and were engaged in a discussion while Owen attempted to interject his opinion. It was somewhat of an unexpected scene. As soon as I arrived, the attention of the three people were immediately drawn to me, and they rushed over. Oh hubla. A blah blah blah. Findinay was the first to reach me. She had actually grabbed something from somewhere to gag her mouth, and that gag caused her to drool when she tried to explain something to me. So I take that thing out first. Puh, master bastard. Look at this. They're having a festival at the academy. P. Professor Deus. They say each lab is allowed to set up one stand or display their achievements. Soul Whisperer. How about we do something like a performance? Each of them spouted things they wanted to say. I quickly reached out and grabbed the notice that Findinay was holding and read it. It was a paper that read Loburn Summer Festival. It was almost the end of summer now. Now, this reminded me that there were festive periods in Retry, and every time it was held, there would be various events where users could obtain abilities or items. It was a notice asking each professor's lab to submit a work related to their achievements or set up a stand. It wasn't a very interesting event since I wasn't planning on raising Arya as a hero anymore, but everyone seemed to have slightly different opinions. How about having a dueling arena? You know, the kind of place where we can all gather and have a big brawl. Findinay suggested something absurd. It's a chance to showcase my research items. I've come up with an incredible imitation body. It goes swoosh swoosh when you stab and then blood comes out too. Professor Fell wanted to turn the student festival into a gory scene. Can I also perform? Even Owen joined in, seemingly eager for a chance to play on stage. Hearing them talk, I sighed and replied, just do what you want. I didn't have the luxury to care about it. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 146, Festival Date 1. Chapter 146, Festival Date 1. During the period when summer was about to come to an end, a refreshing breeze blew as if to reward the students' efforts for attending the lecture under the scorching sun, amidst which the students bustled around. Today was the day of the annual summer festival. Students set their pens aside, professors stowed their lecture notes away, and everyone took a breather to enjoy the day. Normally, I would have taken Arya and visited various places. While it was evident that in games like Retry, bonuses such as stats, skills, or items were often distributed instead of merely passing by during events like this. It was a kind of festival for the users as well. But there is no need to do that now. Because Arya was no longer a hero, there was no need to take her around here and there, following a predetermined strategy guide robotically. That child just needed to enjoy herself and do what she wanted to the fullest. However, there was nothing I could get from this festival either. As a professor, most of the things I could obtain were things that were of no use to me. In the end, for me, this festival would just pass by like a flowing stream. So, it was time to take a little break. Was it because of that? I stepped away from the hustle and bustle outside for a while and closed my eyes alone in the cool air of the laboratory. There was neither Findinay, who would babble noisily, nor the dark spiritualist, who appeared to shrink strangely. Only my presence, Owen or Iluania, nor anyone else. Everyone had gone out to enjoy the festival, so I was taking a short break all by myself. Of course, it wasn't completely quiet. The voices coming through the window were quite lively. However, having time like this to be all by myself was quite precious. I was always troubled by those ghosts I couldn't exorcise in my past life, and I was busier than ever in this life. Yes, it was just a brief moment of rest. This would be enough. Creak. However, someone opened the door to the laboratory after a short while, and the person stepped in cautiously with light footsteps. When I opened my eyes slowly, standing before me was Eleanor Ledin Griffin, with her big eyes blinking at me. I already knew it was Eleanor before I opened my eyes. I could tell by her graceful footsteps and her boldness to enter my lab without knocking she was the only one who dared to do that. Deus. I am sure I have asked you to call me Professor. Normally, she would address me properly. However, She would occasionally call me using only my name. Whenever that happened, I would give her a demerit. Every time that happened, she would wear a long face and apologize. Although I wondered if such an intelligent person like her had her learning ability lessened, today was different. Eleanor giggled and whispered, "Currently, I'm not here as a student but rather as a princess." I wondered what she meant by that, but the answer immediately presented itself in my laboratory. Despite him covering his face with a bizarre mask sold at the festival, a certain aura emanating from his body had already revealed his identity. His elegant yet confident steps and the dignity he possessed were not something that would belong to an ordinary noble. Once he swiftly removed the mask, revealing his cascading blonde hair, King Orpheus appeared. "Haha, long time no see, Deus." He spread his hands exaggeratedly, thinking he would surprise me in his own way. Upon seeing His Majesty the King, I slowly rose from my seat and bowed. I knew he didn't like excessive formality, so I kept it to the bare minimum. "Greetings, Your Majesty. You're quite a boring person." Orpheus seemed disappointed. However, I didn't react much, and soon after, the Archmage Ropelican also entered and we exchanged greetings. Just as I finished all the busy work related to the Marias tribe, I happened to hear about the festival at my sister's academy, so I came here secretly. "I will inform the dean." I thought we should extend proper courtesy, but Orpheus shook his head. "No need for that. I don't want the festive atmosphere to be ruined because of me. The spotlight should be on the students, right? Thank you for your consideration." Indeed, as expected of Orpheus. It was a small act of consideration on his part because he knew that if it were to become known that the king made a surprise visit, the spotlight of the Onedi festival would be on him instead of the students. "Well, Ropelican and I will enjoy ourselves. But more importantly," he cleared his throat and glanced at Eleanor discreetly. "Aren't men usually interested in approaching ladies during such festivals?" "That is possible. Certainly, caught up in the excitement of the festival, and they might gather the courage to approach other students they had been eyeing. Humph, then there might be those with ill intentions who could target my sister, Eleanor, right? After all, she's a royal and has an exceptional appearance. What are you trying to say?" As Orpheus continued while feigning ignorance, Eleanor looked utterly dumbfounded. "So, wouldn't it be good if you watched over my sister, Eleanor? You don't have to stick around her all day, perhaps just in the morning." Only now did Eleanor understand Orpheus' intention. She let out a faint sigh and then held back her words. So, with that extraordinary mind of hers, she quickly concluded that staying silent would be more advantageous to her caught in the cunning scheme of the siblings. I responded calmly. "Princess Eleanor, do you intend to enjoy the festival from the perspective of a princess?" If that is what you want to do, I will comply. However, there will be many restrictions. If it were Princess Eleanor instead of Student Eleanor, naturally, I would have to change the manner I treated her." Eleanor seemed hesitant, not desiring this change in treatment. "Well, wouldn't it suffice if you accompany her and treat her as a student?" "That is not feasible. Merely accompanying her in my capacity as a professor could give rise to unfavorable rumors about Princess Eleanor. If she wanted to behave like a princess, of course I had to act like an escort. However, if she wanted to behave like a student, there was no need for me to accompany her since it would only give rise to strange rumors. This was the minimal resistance I could put up towards the scheme of the siblings. Just do it. It's an order from the king." Unable to refute my point, the king immediately pulled out the ultimate move only the royal family could use. I briefly glanced at Orpheus before finally bowing my head. "I will comply. I am sorry. It does not matter. Also, feel free to speak comfortably. I am here to escort you, the princess, after all." Eventually, the situation unfolded according to King Orpheus' wishes. However, I wasn't a fool that I would not notice that there might be some hidden intent behind Orpheus' decision to have Eleanor and I accompany each other. Regardless, I couldn't act according to his intentions because, for one, I already had a fiancée. While I did my best to suppress any personal emotions before answering her, Eleanor unexpectedly smiled at my response. "Really? Deus?" "Yes, Your Highness. I still prefer to call you by name just like before. Calling you Professor feels like there's a barrier, you know? I wasn't sure what that was about, but anyway, if Princess Eleanor liked it, then it was fine. So, is there any place you would like to visit?" It'd be better if the place is not too conspicuous, don't you think so?" After a moment of consideration, Eleanor grabbed my hand with excitement as she thought of a good place. I was slightly taken aback as it was a bit sudden. Then Eleanor started running eagerly for an unknown reason, as if in an urgent situation. At first, it felt like I was being dragged around by a mischievous princess, but when I saw her ears turn red from behind, I realized that she must have mustered a lot of courage to do this. So, I pretended not to notice anything and decided to play along. The place Eleanor dragged me to was the rooftop of the academy. With a cool breeze blowing, it was completely secluded, with no one else around. Just wait here for a moment. With her face flushed, Eleanor turned away and left the rooftop, before quickly returning with a canvas and pen. Considering that she had been punished previously for her actions, I furrowed my brows right away, but Eleanor immediately shouted, "No, I'm not going to draw anything strange. I just wanted to draw you with you right in front of me, Deus. It's such a good opportunity." Her voice faltered as she spoke. "Is that not allowed?" As I looked at Eleanor, who was glancing up at me, I replied with a soft sigh. "Do you want me to pose in a certain way?" No, just be comfortable." She immediately brightened up, took out her pen, and put on the white beret she had brought along. Since there was no need for me to pose in a particular manner, I simply sat on the bench on the rooftop and watched her without saying a word. She seems to have the posture. As she was drawing, Eleanor glanced at me occasionally. The look in her eyes was quite serious. I was worried that she might draw something strange and I would have to ruin it, but I felt relieved seeing her serious expression. It didn't take too long. After doodling diligently for about 30 minutes, Eleanor smiled brightly and handed the drawing to me. She drew it quite well. I remembered that even when I saw her before, she was quite skilled at drawing figures, but now, her skill had improved to the point where she wouldn't fall behind when compared to the artists of Claren. She was a girl with talents in various fields, so it was no surprise that she had progressed quickly in drawing once she became engrossed with it. "It is incredible." Really? Feeling good? Eleanor plopped down next to me. Then she suddenly turned her head towards me and asked, "Deus, is this reality?" Her eyes were brimming with anticipation. Normally, I would have ignored her, but at least for today. "Do you remember the magical girls I told you about last time?" Yeah. As I responded and spoke about magical girls, Eleanor's eyes sparkled with excitement. Her reaction was so innocent that I couldn't help but smile involuntarily and continued speaking. "They come from something called anime. It is a format that involves drawing multiple pictures to make it look like it is moving." "Is it like when kids doodle on the corners of a book?" Eleanor pretended that she understood what I hinted at and nodded vigorously. "In that field, there is also a job called voice actor whose role is to give voices to those drawings." "Voice actor? It is a manner of acting by speaking as if you have become a magical girl." "Voice actor. A voice actor. I want to try doing something like that as well." Eleanor seemed shy about dressing up as a magical girl, so I wondered if she would enjoy something like this. However, her excitement was evident as she stomped her feet with enthusiasm. So, I thought I had said something correct. Yet, Eleanor looked at me all of a sudden. "Oops, it shouldn't be like this." Eleanor, who quickly covered her mouth, said playfully with a small laugh, "What are you talking about? Of course, it's reality. Did you want to do that?" It was the phrase she uttered once she realized that it wasn't just a dream. I wondered why she wanted to do it again, but then Eleanor provided an answer to my doubts, albeit a little shyly. "It's the only experience in my life where I felt something called destiny, so I wanted to try it again and again." Then, Eleanor cautiously placed her hand on top of mine. "Princess, it was fine when she did it earlier as she did it for the sake of moving around, but now it was not appropriate for her to do this." When I tried to draw the line and call her out, Eleanor interrupted me firmly. "Deus, it's an order from the royal family." Her voice itself carried quite a bit of strength. It was overbearing and dignified yet so straightforward that it seemed it would break easily. "Just stay like this for a moment." "As you wish." Eleanor's hand, which was holding mine gently, trembled slightly. She no longer looked like the girl who was chattering loudly with a big smile just moments ago. Deus. I mean me. I've enjoyed dreaming since that day." "Glad to hear that." It was a somewhat out-of-place confession, but it wasn't that bad. Naturally, it was good news that she, who was once afraid of falling asleep, had come to love it once again. Actually, there are times when I have nightmares or dreams about chilling or scary situations. If I could be more honest, those cases happen more often. It seems like I still haven't escaped properly from several traumas. The emotion I felt from her trembling hand was definitely fear. I remembered the time when I entered her dream back in the royal palace. Her mother, Highland Lyddon Griffin, appeared as a grotesque figure. Of course, that was because evil ghost Griffin had taken over her body. Regardless of the reason, for Eleanor, her mother still remained as a source of fear within her. "Yet you still enjoy dreaming?" When I asked her cautiously, Eleanor gently leaned her head against my shoulder. "Yes, regardless, I still do." She gently closed her eyes and poured out her fuzzy emotions as if she were dreaming. "Because I can see you there. No matter what nightmare I have, no matter what monster chases after me, you always come to my rescue. Deus, no Kim Shinwoo." As if behaving childishly, Eleanor lightly rubbed her face against my shoulder. Nevertheless, with her eyes closed, she smiled and lowered her head. "I want to see you again. Not as Deus, but the real you, Kim Shinwoo." I love dreaming because I can see you when I'm dreaming because I can meet you again. Eleanor added. Perhaps that's the reason I must have drawn you like that, because waking up means parting with you and it's just too sad for me. Eleanor clung on to me as if pleading. I knew well about the emotions she held towards me, but if she were to ask me if I could accept them, the answer would be a resounding no. I cannot accept your feelings. It was a firm rejection. Even if it hurt her, I believed that I had to firmly reject those feelings. Fufu. Eleanor bumped her forehead against my shoulder with a look of amusement. Seeing her unexpected relaxed reaction, I momentarily froze. Eleanor slowly opened her eyes and looked up at me with those transparent golden eyes. Haven't I already told you? I always meet you in my dreams and part with you when I wake up. I meet you every day and lose you every day. In retry, Eleanor Lydon Griffin was the fallen princess who had plotted to overthrow her older brother, the current king, Orpheus, and ascend to the throne herself. And once again, I lost you today. I had become so accustomed to her innocent appearance that I had overlooked one crucial fact. Tomorrow I'll try harder. About how strong of a person she. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 147. Festival Date 2. Chapter 147. Festival Date 2. Morning had passed and it was now lunchtime. Eleanor had already left to spend time with King Orpheus, once again, leaving me all alone. Instead of returning to the lab right away, I figured that I might as well patrol the area and maybe take a look around at the festival. With that in mind, I stumbled upon an unusually noisy tent. Normally, I would have just passed by without much interest. However, not only was there a crowd blocking the path, but I could also hear familiar music playing. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't just people gathered there. Wandering spirits who had previously haunted the academy were also gathered around because of the music. A hastily scribbled sign that read, Professor Deus Laboratory, was hanging above the tent. As I circled to the back of the tent, I saw Owen passionately playing a small piano he had brought from somewhere. When I went to the front, beyond the child who was playing with his eyes closed and immersed in his performance, there was a miniature duel arena that was typically used to play with mini cars or spinning tops. And there, go. Don't give up. Be strong. They were using hands adorned in something flashy to fight each other. On each side stood a person who was channeling their mana into Professor Fell's prosthetic arms as if they were threads and controlling it. Come on. Move. Don't just stand there like a spinning top, it's a matter of life and death. Findinay excitedly encouraged them from the center of the arena as they gambled. How about this? If you look at this imitation arm, even Professor Felpetra was there, setting up a stall in the corner and recommending prosthetic arms to students. The thought of them using my name on this dreadful hybrid collaboration already made me dizzy. Just then, Erica Bright and Academy nurse Karen broke through the crowd. Erica, who spotted me, approached to ask, we received a report that there are duels between hands that can spurt blood everywhere taking place here, and that you can even bet on them. Wow, I was wondering what kind of nonsense is going on here. But the person who reported this explained it quite well. Karen clicked her tongue and exclaimed in amazement. Let me take care of this. Okay, do your best. Good luck. The two of them seemed to trust me and left. After taking a deep breath, I approached Owen. Huh? I grabbed the hands of the boy playing the piano, stopped him, and then forcefully pressed down on the piano keys. Clang. Due to the loud sound, everyone's gaze turned towards us. Unknowingly, I furrowed my brow and uttered a single sentence with an expression that indicated I was furious. Everything is now closed. Wasn't it fun? Just be honest with me, our ideas were pretty good, don't you think so? Findinay, who was patrolling the streets with me, babbled regretfully. You are right. Honestly, the idea itself was not bad. I had to at least admit that. I never thought they would be able to create an event that fulfilled Findinay's desire for a fighting arena, Professor Fell's enthusiasm to showcase her prosthetic arms, and Owen's yearning to perform all at once. However, it went a bit too far. One of the issues here was that Professor Fell's prosthetic arms were too perfect. With blood flying everywhere as the hands moved around, it was too grotesque for an academy festival. But that's what made it fun. Additionally, the biggest issue was the opening of a gambling den. I will say it again. This is an academy. This is a festival for students. Well, sorry about that. I got carried away with the excitement. Findinay honestly admitted her mistake. Truthfully, I wished she had at least taken off her maid uniform because there were outsiders visiting the Academy Festival. And surprisingly, perhaps because it was a festival, the outsiders who came here didn't find her strange at all. Instead, they simply passed it off as part of the event. Anyway, try to stay out of trouble during the festival. Do not stir up any unnecessary disturbance. Well, I didn't plan on causing a disturbance on purpose. Findinay scratched the back of her head and looked around. Students were laughing and chattering, eating food, playing pranks, and raising their voices. The word peaceful could be applied to many situations, but at this moment, there was no shortage of reasons to describe this time as peaceful. Are you bored? Therefore, I naturally thought that if it were the usual Findine, she would have felt disappointed on seeing such a scene because she was someone who lived for battles and survival. However, to my surprise, Findine opened her mouth while wearing a contemplative expression. No, it's nice to see. It was such an unexpected answer. I closed my mouth, realizing that I would frequently encounter unexpected situations today. Findine continued speaking. I only fought because I was born in situations where I had to master bastard. I'm also fighting because I don't want other people like me to be born, and I hate the republic that fastened us with damn leashes. I see. We've been deprived of our freedom from birth, and I've been fighting to regain it. The republic was a place its citizens were deprived of things we took for granted, like freedom. It seemed even more so, especially because Findine could be seen as part of a slave class in the Griffin Kingdom. Every day I shouted for freedom. Let's reclaim our freedom. Let's break free from the oppression of the republic like a broken record. However, one day, when most of the scrapyard nomads fell into a trap set by the extermination units and died, do you know what I was thinking? Findine glanced at me. It was a conversation topic that didn't seem to fit the street scenery, but I calmly listened to her. What was it? Damn it, is freedom truly necessary when so many young children are spilling blood to this extent? Should we have just bowed our heads to survive? It seemed like there was more to her words than meets the eye. When she mentioned that most of the members of scrapyard nomads died, it likely involved non-combatants such as children. With such concerns, I took the remaining members to cross the mountain range. Findine slipped her hand into her pocket and glanced around again. Then, she shrugged her shoulders as if she realized something. Yeah, it turns out it is this good. That is why everyone is struggling so much and screaming for freedom, because it feels so great. Findine. Seeing her reaction, I found myself calling her name before I even realized it. For some reason, it felt like she might just disappear somewhere if I didn't do so. Perhaps that was why I, somewhat uncharacteristically, gestured towards the beverage stall next to us. How about we have something to drink? Are you thirsty? I'll buy. Out of the blue, Findine somehow took some coins from her pocket and bought a drink for me. It was juice with ice floating in it, and it tasted just decent enough to drink. So we simply stood there for a moment, sipping on our drinks. Surprisingly, Findine drank hers quickly, even chewing on the ice. Watching her like that, I uttered the words I had organized in my mind for a moment. Our contract is valid for a period of 5 years. Crunch. Findine chewed on the ice before responding. Yeah, I know. It feels like at least 2 years have passed, but it's only been half a year, which is surprising. Seeing Findine let out forced laughter, I continued speaking. After 5 years, once everything I need to resolve is taken care of, you will be free from our contract. That's right. Findine's gaze momentarily drifted far away as if imagining that day arriving. There was a hint of regret in her eyes. By then, once I achieve my goal and if the continent is still intact, at that time I will be the one to lend you a hand. 5 years was the time remaining until the fate of the continent was decided. If I managed to stop the impending doom properly, then afterwards it wouldn't be bad to assist Findine in fighting against the Republic. Your dream is on the scale of saving the continent. Have you not noticed it yet? After all, we have been going around together all this time. I responded slyly at Findine's playful retort, which was not typical of me. The other side laughed in return. Yeah, I felt it. I got myself a very impressive master bastard. Findine, who had been laughing heartily, slowly stopped laughing and let out a slightly regretful sigh. Then, after looking around, Findine changed the conversation. Master bastard, what would I have become if I had been born in the Griffin Kingdom? The Griffin Kingdom is not a utopia. Although it annoyed me that she deliberately avoided my offer to help, I decided to respond to Findine's words first. Students often talk about things like this, right? What if this happened? What if that happened? If I were born in North Sweden, would I be much different from now? It almost felt like Findine was forcing the question on me. Probably, but that nasty temper of yours would still be there. TCH, you might not be as strong as you are now, but you might have recognized your talent and applied to join the garrison. That does seem like something I would do. Findine nodded in agreement. Yet, I exercised a bit more imagination. While working in the garrison like that, you would have probably caught Darius' eye and become friendly with the members of the household. From what I see, if it were Master Bastard from his Playboy era, you would have made a move on me right away, wouldn't you? As I stared blankly at Findine for a moment, she met my gaze. Alright, I would let her win this time. Yes, maybe it could have happened. No, that is definitely how it would have happened. Because you are more charming than you think. So, will I end up being a northern wench who, despite cursing at you and complaining, eventually succumbs to your sweet words and techniques, Master Bastard? Though I am not sure if you would have liked the person I was back then. We're just talking about hypotheticals. Why are you taking this so seriously? You'll just think of him as you, the Master Bastard I've known so far. Findinay smirked and closed her eyes for a moment. She took a deep breath and raised the corners of her mouth. It's a completely useless fantasy. How can I ever become a northern countryside maiden? It really doesn't suit me, but probably would have been enjoyable. I felt like such a remark would follow that. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 148. Festival Date 3. Chapter 148. Festival Date 3. I continued to spend my time walking around with Findinay. And even though I didn't particularly intend to, we ended up having lunch together. And even afterwards, I thought we might wander around a bit more or take a break. However, because of the gambling incident, Erica summoned Findinay to Dean's office. Hence, after sending off the grumbling woman, I enjoyed the returning peace. The dark spiritualist was nowhere to be seen and Iluania was roaming around with Sevilla, showing her the festival. Since Owen was also summoned along with Findinay, I had no one accompanying me at the moment. Thinking I had seen enough of the festival, I planned to return to the lab. However, a certain girl caught my eye. It was Aria Rios, wearing a ridiculous white hat that looked like a souvenir and green-rimmed sunglasses. She was holding skewers in one hand and a huge drink in the other. Laughing and chatting among themselves besides her were her old comrades, Leoris, Happy, Florencia, and Jean. Seeing her enjoying the festival was so rewarding that I unconsciously felt the corners of my mouth twitch. Oh, Professor. Noticing my gaze with her sunglasses still on, Aria ran over. The other students naturally followed her. Even though she joined the group later than the rest, it seemed like Aria had already taken on a leadership role in the group. You seem to be enjoying yourself quite a bit. When I commented on how she seemed to be enjoying the festival twice as much as everyone else, Aria turned awkwardly and hesitated. It's just that it's been a long time since I was able to have fun at a festival without really thinking about anything in particular. I knew it well, because in the first round, I was the one who kept her busy since the start of the winter vacation of the second year. Since then, she probably didn't have enough time to properly enjoy events like festivals. She must have not regarded those events as something to enjoy as a student but as ordeals to obtain something. Seeing her enjoying the festival even more passionately to make up for that time now, I wanted to pat her on the head, but I didn't bother to because the big hat was in the way. Aria momentarily handed over her drink to Happy and took out a cat ear headband from her pocket. By the way, Professor, do you know where Eleanor is? I bought this for her to put on. I noticed that the other female students were also wearing animal ear headbands. Since Eleanor had been hanging out with these kids lately, it must have been disappointing as she was not here. She is spending some time alone. She will probably join you in the evening. Geez, she always goes missing when we need her. Since they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Eleanor must have been spending time with King Orpheus, but out of consideration, the king would likely ensure that his sister could join her friends at the festival in the evening. Since I didn't want to take up Aria's time any longer, I was about to say to enjoy the festival and leave. However, all of a sudden, Aria took off her own hat, put it on Leoris, and gave Florencia her sunglasses. She then handed the skewer to Jean and returned to her usual self, sticking close to me. I'm gonna spend some time with Professor for a while. He'll join you guys in the evening with Eleanor. What? Wait a moment. Leoris, who seemed to have feelings for Aria, tried to stop her, but Happy and Florencia responded immediately. Got it. See you in the evening. Then the group left as they were. I couldn't help but feel unpleasant for some reason as I watched Leoris' shoulders slump. Besides, I don't feel like wandering around the festival. Since I was planning to rest, I didn't want to wander around the festival with Aria. However, Aria responded with a laugh. Do you know what? During the festival time, you used to draw me a rough map and make me run around without a break. Talk to someone 3 times, go buy something, eat something, stuff like that. That wasn't me. I know. But since you look the same, can't you even let me vent a little? When Aria mischievously asked me that, I finally sighed and nodded. Alright, if that'll help ease your mind. Oh yeah. She pumped up her fist to celebrate, then immediately linked her arm with mine and dragged me around. The sight of a student and a professor walking around with their arms linked was bound to make people talk. However, Aria didn't pay any heed and continued to lead me around. No matter how much strength and effort I put into trying to slip out, she didn't budge at all. The first thing I want to do is this. Aria pointed to the dart booth. It was a simple yet subtly challenging game of hitting balloons with darts. Pushed by Aria's enthusiasm, I ended up attempting it first. However, since my physical strength was below that of an average person, I was unable to pop many balloons. Fufu, let me do it. As if expecting it, Aria immediately stepped forward and threw the dart. Even in such moments, Her extraordinary eyesight and muscular strength naturally shone. Pop, pop, pop. Arya popped all the balloons cleanly and shrugged her shoulders triumphantly. Fufu. This is the ability of someone who almost saved the world. If you feel satisfied by boasting about this, then I'll let you have it. Since she had popped all the balloons, I thought she might receive something like a large teddy bear, but what she actually got was a small coupon. With that in hand, Arya led me straight to the side stall. It was a food stall selling waffles. When Arya presented the ticket, the stall owner shouted out enthusiastically, "One special waffle." After a short while, he handed her a rather sumptuous waffle. While it was similar in size to the others, it had a variety of toppings and exotic fruits inside. Give it a try. This is something you can't eat even if you are willing to pay. Tasted good. Well, it wasn't exactly to my taste, but considering that it was made by a student, it was undoubtedly excellent. In terms of the price, it didn't seem to offer much value for money, so it was probably given out as a special prize for the dart game. The rest was similar. Arya must have been going around the festival busily, and was able to spend quite a fulfilling time exploring and enjoying the festival. If someone were to ask me if it was enjoyable, it wasn't exactly something I would prefer doing, so I felt somewhat tired instead. However, after spending quite a long time together, we returned to my lab. We've been quite busy, right? Yes. We had been so busy that I really wanted to rest now. Arya nodded with a grin. Now, we can go about bragging that we enjoyed this year's festival 200%. While I did agree that we enjoyed it thoroughly, I wasn't sure if I could brag about it elsewhere. And now, I thought I understood why she acted in this manner. I sat down and asked her, "So, was it similar to what I made you do in the first round?" "More or less. In the first round, I probably had given Arya a tight schedule to nurture her, sending her here and there. It was similar to how one cultivated characters in games, allowing only minimal rest. In the first round, I probably imposed a similar inhuman schedule on her, making her unable to enjoy the festival as a student. It must have been quite difficult. That's right, I was very tired. When I responded with complete understanding, Arya smiled bashfully. There were no ill intentions in her expression. Back then, I couldn't even think about disliking it. I thought it was natural since it was a mission given by you, Professor. Considering the atmosphere around Arya from when I first met her until now, of course, she would consider it to be natural. She probably acted like a saintess who had received a revelation from God, saying that she had to follow it unconditionally. So, when you think about it now, how do you feel? Now that she had clearly chosen to part ways and move on from the me of the first round, I was curious about what Arya thought about those days. It hadn't been long, but I was still curious about her opinion. Arya made a sound with her mouth closed and placed a finger on her lower lip. Each of those gestures made me feel like she was truly the protagonist of a game. As if she was contemplating the answer, Arya rolled her eyes, then smiled and replied, "It was great. Today, I heard quite a lot of unexpected words. Starting with Eleanor, then Findane, and now Arya. The women I had spent time with today had all given me answers that were beyond my understanding of women. I never thought that she would consider my order from the first round, which practically took away the enjoyment of her school days, to be a good thing." As I stared at her silently, asking for an explanation, Arya put her hands behind her back and leaned forward towards me. "Thanks to that, I am who I am today, right? Looking back, those days when I struggled so much that it nearly drove me crazy weren't happy ones. But in the end, I managed to overcome it all and pulled through." On the contrary, Arya's face showed an expression of relief, one without any lingering regrets. There was no trace of resentment or any emotion towards the me from the first round. I realized that she had truly grown. I found myself also smiling subtly. Yes, that's right. Her growth was truly commendable. So, I didn't bother hiding the smile that was meant to congratulate her. And there's one more good thing. Arya sneakily approached me. Seeing that, I felt a strange pressure from her. Therefore, I leaned back unconsciously, only to hit the backrest of the chair. "I can tell you many things that you don't know of, Professor. I can also be of great help to you, Professor. So I, who has only been on the receiving end until now, am your final arrangement." Her voice was cheerful and she had a smile on her face. To anyone else, it would have looked like a cheerful girl was approaching me. But strangely, it felt like I was facing a predator. Thud. It was truly an astounding move. Before I knew it, she was already sitting on my lap, facing me directly. She confined my legs between her thighs and was rubbing her buttocks in a provocative manner that didn't suit her age. "Do not cross the line. When saying goodbye, it was the first time I was held in your arms, Professor." I immediately realized that she was referring to the time when she had let go of the me from the first round, causing me to be momentarily stunned. "Can you please let me feel your embrace once again? Keep your lower body still. You never respond to students, do you?" Arya sulked as she pouted her lips. However, since I didn't refuse her request, she cautiously leaned her petite body against me. I can hear the sound of a heart pounding. I don't know if it's the sound from my chest or yours, Professor. I could hear Aria's playful laugh coming from beneath my chin. Slowly, she wrapped her arms around my waist. Despite the slight tension in her grip, her voice surprisingly contained a hint of tears. As you know, Professor, saving the continent means living with pain. People will clap, cheer, and thank you, Professor. Aria's touch trembled softly. But do they know that? In the end, it all came back to me as a burden. Expectation, gratitude, blessing, envy, and so on. Aria must have felt so many positive emotions. When she first received them, it likely ignited a sense of duty and enthusiasm within her. However, as time went on, as she lost more and more, and as the path became more difficult, ultimately, all those things just became another burden weighing on her shoulders. It was a path of hardship with swords and spears thrust into it. In order not to lose anyone else, there was a time when I had no choice but to lose myself instead. Professor, I hope you will never have to experience the suffering I've endured. Professor. Tears gradually soaked my chest as I heard Aria's voice turning tearful. Just say the word, anytime. You can tell me whenever you want, and I'll be ready to walk that path again. Instead of you, Professor, I, who has already become numb to all this, am ready to sacrifice everything for this continent. Perhaps Aria didn't completely grasp the weight of the words she had just uttered. Even though it was only the second round, there was one reason why I didn't consider it fortunate to meet Aria Rias for the first time. If it were Aria who was already in that state, she wouldn't have been able to reach the true ending, even in the second round. Because one could only reach the true ending of the second round through the sacrifice of a girl named Aria Rias. The death of the protagonist. And just like that, the game concluded. The girl saved the continent and closed her eyes for the last time. Now, Aria had matured enough mentally to guide the continent to the true ending. However, I gently pulled the girl into my embrace but added some strength to my hold. It was a symbol of my determination to never let go. You only have one thing to do. It wasn't about collecting the items needed to save the continent, building relationships with comrades, or growing. You should do well in your final exams this winter. And then, find something you actually want to do before graduating from the academy. Graduation, anything is fine. Find your aptitude, discover your talents, and hone what you want to do. There's no need to fear the future. Slowly, I placed my hand on the girl's head. Aria didn't resist instead. She closed her eyes and accepted it. Little lady, the continent is safe. Because I am here. Because I will save it. Tears streamed down her cheeks. The girl who had suffered a lot until now had finally let go of her burden properly. So the tears contained relief. She didn't bother wiping them away. After shedding tears for a long time, Aria sniffled and planted her forehead on my chest. Perhaps now that her emotions had calmed down, Aria whispered breathlessly. Even so, if it's really tough for you, you can come and talk to me. You can lean on me. As the only one who has already walked the path you will walk, as the predecessor who walked it before you. They'll be here for you. You're so reliable. Fufu, I'm the strongest female student on this continent. Squeeze. Aria hugged me tighter and rested her chin on my shoulder. Along with the sound of her hot breath, her voice reached my ear. Professor, I'll be waiting for the day I become your sword. I hoped that such a day would never arrive. Don't wait for it. That was my dot. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 149. Festival Date 4. Chapter 149. Festival Date 4. On a dark evening, as the festival drew to a close, the academy still glowed brightly with lights. Filled with a determination not to end the day just yet, an enormous bonfire illuminated the dark sky. Sigh. And there was Erica standing beside me. The sigh that escaped her lips was quite long. Are you worried? Perhaps there might be some strange rumors about you that might be going around because of me. Due to her experience of directly refuting the rumors and gossip that surrounded me in the past, Erica reacted sensitively to rumors. Since I also felt that I had been getting complacent, I had nothing to say in defense of myself in this situation. In the morning, you had a secret meeting with Princess Eleanor, then an outdoor date with a maid wearing quite a revealing outfit in the afternoon, followed by another date with a female student. It was not a date. Although I tried to explain, Erica turned a deaf ear to my words and kept speaking. And later, you were taken to the lab by Aria, right? Ultimately, there was nothing wrong with what was said. Because I couldn't say anything in response to that statement, I simply turned my gaze towards the bonfire, where the dark spiritualist was spinning around, looking excited. Even the last time, I had noticed that she seemed to like big fires like those. I did not do anything strange. When I continued to remain silent, it felt like Erica's fiery gaze was stabbing into my side, so I eventually answered her. She let out a deep sigh upon hearing my response. Of course, you did not. I don't think you acted out of ulterior motives. You probably did something like counseling. Erica's guess was unexpectedly accurate. When it involved personal feelings that couldn't be shared with others, it could indeed be seen as counseling. However, the problem is, people around us don't think that way. Despite that, rumors about you are already circulating, especially among the guests from outside. Who told you this? Erica's silence affirmed my words. No matter who she was, she wouldn't have been able to catch wind of the rumors this quickly. Since Erica was my fiancée, that person must have told her out of concern. Your fiancé is spending time with other women, was probably what they said. Somehow, being scrutinized like this by those around us made it feel like we were the protagonists of a morning drama one. If things continued like this, not only would there be misunderstandings, but Erica's image would also suffer. Well, I don't really care what other people think of me. However, you're different. You're the first recognized dark mage in the kingdom, the sole whisperer affiliated to the royal family. I could hear genuine concern only for me from Erica's voice. Be careful, as great as your position is, there will be many who are. Her response showed that she didn't care what others thought about her. Upon hearing that, I once again sensed the changes in her. She was no longer a woman that a ruffian like Gideon Zironia could sway. The fragile Erica, whose future had been forcibly taken away by her household status, had now disappeared. Her attitude of not being intimidated by the gazes of others, because she was confident in herself and her firmly held beliefs, perfectly suited her to be called a lady. But strangely, I couldn't help but wonder why I didn't want to leave her alone. You seem to have misunderstood me. Huh? Erica tilted her head in confusion at my sudden words. While still staring at the blazing bonfire, I continued speaking. If my image as the sole whisperer is important, then naturally, as my fiancé, you should not get involved in such malicious gossip either. That's true. It seems like there is a need to talk about our relationship. I slowly stretched out my hand to Erica. If you do not mind, how about we spend some time together? Erica stared blankly at my hand before chuckling, finally taking it cautiously. Do you usually flirt with women in North Sweden like this? I do not really want to talk about those times. All right, I never imagined that my fiancé would be such a playboy either. They really investigated your past to make me change my mind and force me to marry into the Zironia family, you know? Indeed, that could be useful ammunition for the family meeting this time. Knowing that they had researched my background would give me more of an advantage when we finally visit the Bright household. Yes, that's why I'm telling you. Then Erica smiled softly as if it were expected of her. Her fingers naturally and gently intertwined with mine. Then, with a red face, she lowered her head deeply. When I kept staring at her after her bold action, she covered her mouth with her other hand and glanced at me sideways. Don't look. The heat feels intense. Blushing with embarrassment, Erica spoke bluntly. Following her request, I slightly turned my head. As I walked slowly towards the bonfire, her steps naturally followed mine. Oh, it's Professor Erica and Professor Deus. Wow, they make a good-looking couple. They suit each other well. Voices came from around us. It was a perfect performance to quell rumors about our relationship. Let us stay like this for a moment. At my words, Erica nodded without saying much, subtly moving closer to place her arm against mine. Though her cheeks were still flushed, she seemed to have calmed down now. She looked at the bonfire before speaking again. Just a few months ago, I never thought we'd have a moment like this. Me neither. Well, you know. Erica's lips twitched as she looked hesitant. There was a look on her face that seemed as if she wanted to say something but wasn't sure if it was appropriate. To provide encouragement, I gave her a reassuring squeeze on her hand. Erica finally met my gaze and spoke her mind. When you first came to the academy, didn't we spend about a month and a half together? During that 3-month period, we spent half of the time together. After which, our relationship soured, we hardly spoke, and eventually, I was dismissed from my professorship at the end of the 3rd month. Back then, did you ever feel a sort of flutter when you were around me? Seeing this, Erica continued nervously. No, it was my first time seeing a guy, and I've never even been on a date. Did we ever go on a date? Didn't we drink coffee on the rooftop at night? Erica swung the hand she clasped with mine to hit my thigh. Well, we did spend a lot of time alone together. Although you said you didn't like me, I still wondered if I was the only one who managed to make you feel a flutter when I was around. Honestly, I couldn't confidently say that I had ever felt something like that. At that time, I didn't really understand what love was. And besides, I didn't remember those few months that well. However, during those 3 months, I was quite busy comforting the angel and the residents of Sedima. That's right. Thanks to that, I was even accused of being a devil worshipper. Anyway, but even in the midst of all that, I always made time for you. I am not sure if I ever felt a flutter in me around you. However, I did enjoy it. When I confessed my honest feelings, Erica's gaze didn't waver from me. Then, she cautiously dropped another question. How about now? I'm feeling extremely nervous right now. Her usual cool-headed icy professor expression had melted away in the warmth of the bonfire. It was replaced by a face filled with earnestness that was only visible to me. Your hands are bigger than I thought. You look so thin and need to eat more. You smell sweeter than I expected. What if you can also hear my heart beating so fast right now? These various emotions and thoughts are making my head feel so complicated. Erica exhaled deeply before speaking again. Deus, how about you? Despite our relationship being fake, are you enjoying this time with me, with your fiancé? Her question gave me a chance to ask myself. Am I enjoying this? Yes. It was enjoyable. It is pleasant. Spending time with a woman named Erica Bright wasn't bad at all. Since we were both adults, there was no pressure, and we didn't force anything on each other. While we didn't care about the opinions of others, our time together was quite special. I'm glad to hear that. Erica slowly lowered her head and a faint sigh of relief escaped along with her voice. Thud. She released her hand, which was holding onto mine. The warmth and weight I felt in my left hand disappeared, leaving only a hollow feeling behind. Though the night breeze naturally seeped in to replace it, the empty space remained unfilled. Erica took out a piece of paper from her coat pocket. It was a familiar item, a document tightly bound with a red thread. It was the annulment letter. Here. Erica slowly unfolded the annulment letter she had handed me. Next to my signature was hers, which wasn't there initially. I didn't feel the need to say anything. I calmly looked at her, waiting for her to explain her intention. You said I should bring this to you once I returned to being the radiant and beautiful Erica Bright. Yes, I did. How about now? She stood tall with confidence. Despite a slight tear glistening in the corner of her eye, her posture remained unwavering. Seeing that, I answered, You are radiant and beautiful now. Indeed, she was. I had no choice but to answer honestly. Erica spoke with a smile. Do you know that you've changed so much? I didn't deny it. If I objectively looked back at myself, there were indeed many differences between who I was when I first came to the academy and who I am now. To you, who could only faintly feel emotions and was more indifferent and blunt than other people, this is the only apology I, Erica Bright, can offer. As the woman who betrayed you, I hope I can be of some help to you, even if it's just a little. When she slowly lowered the annulment letter, her tearful face came into view. Despite appearing distressed, she continued to speak. Just like when you gave this letter to me for my sake, this time I'll give it to you for yours. When I handed her this annulment letter, the words I said to her were, Not even for a moment. I have never felt the emotion called love for you, because I have never stopped loving you, not even for a moment. This time, instead. However, you are worth loving. No, you are a woman deserving of love. That is how much you are worth loving, and deserve to be loved. That is why I spent time with you and hope to see you smile. I wish to love you. Therefore, it'll give you time for you to meet someone who can make you smile, someone who you can truly love. She returned those words to me. With tears streaming down her face, Erica took a deep breath and continued. Have confidence in yourself because you are an incredibly amazing man. That annulment letter, when you find a woman you truly love. Erica slowly closed her eyes. Use it then. She seemed to find it agonizing to just look at me. When you find someone who can awaken your emotions, bring it to me, and then we will finalize our separation. Erica. Just like when Erica pushed Gideon away by using our engagement, she told me to use her as a shield to prevent any women I might not love from forcing themselves on me. It would be a painful stage for her. She would have to wait tirelessly for me to make my decision, sacrificing her most brilliant years, and in the end, nothing would remain. As long as we maintained our engagement, Erica couldn't meet anyone else. No one else could love her. Those are the words I want to say to you, who has been my benefactor until now. Flit. The annulment letter fell from her grasp and to the ground. Once again, Erica held onto my hand and as if trying to hide it, she buried her tear-streaked face in my chest. Unaware of the situation, the people around us either protested, saying that we shouldn't rub salt in their wounds, or expressed envy, saying that our supposedly fiery display of affection was too much for their eyes. However, we ignored them and simply focused on each other. But as your fiancé, if I were to voice my selfishness, that one phrase, after uttering those words, please don't leave, Erica continued to sob endlessly in my arms. She just cried, trembling with the fear of separation. To prevent anyone else from seeing that, I gently embraced. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 150. Preparing for the family meet. Chapter 150. Preparing for the family meet. Did you enjoy it? I asked you, did you enjoy it? Please say something. After the festival ended, we went back to our daily lives. The students were busy preparing for their final exams, which could be considered the end of the second semester. Naturally, us professors were also busy with preparations as well. Recently, I too had been rummaging through various books, reviewing them and considering questions for the exam. Perhaps the Dark Spiritualist would be quite helpful in this regard. The festival only lasted for a day, so tell me, how did you end up meeting with 4 women at once? However, it seemed like she was quite upset because I had seemingly abandoned her and wandered around with other people during the festival. Although I wondered why I had to make excuses about such things. First things first, I needed her help at the moment. It was just a coincidence. Upon hearing my vague answer, the Dark Spiritualist pouted with displeasure. Even if it was just a coincidence, how could you coincidentally meet with 4 people in a day? And coincidentally end up flirting with them? Seeing this, it seems like the rumors that you were a playboy might be true after all. Cut it out. I responded irritatedly as her complaining started to bother me. The Dark Spiritualist immediately pouted again, and this time, she laid on her back on the top of my desk. Because of that, the exam papers with the question I had written down were hidden, and all I could see was the exposed stomach of the Dark Spiritualist, covered by a stocking-like piece of clothing. Was this what she wore under her robe? It seemed quite revealing. Huff, I'm already dead. But do you know what? While everyone else grows old and falls sick, I'm stuck in this state forever. So what? I sighed before infusing mana into my hands and pushing the Dark Spiritualist off the desk. And just like that, the Dark Spiritualist rolled off the desk and fell. Being a ghost, she wouldn't get hurt or feel pain, but nevertheless, her reaction was quite amusing. Surely this was not the image I had of you in mind. Although she acted like a child at times when she was around me, recently, it seemed like her mental age had truly regressed. She was someone who had spent her life secluded in the laboratory, solely focused on studying necromancy. Perhaps all her other desires from back then were now surfacing. I heard that she acted differently when I was not around. Owen said that during the time I was absent from the academy, the Dark Spiritualist who spent time with him was calm and cold. Therefore, I thought that perhaps she only showed her true self to me. However, why did she pursue necromancy while having such a disposition? Why did she want to sever all ties and solely focus on reaching the end of necromancy? I was really curious, but I didn't voice out my thoughts. Just then, Erica Bright entered the lab after knocking on the door. She was currently assisting me with this exam paper as well. Of course, in addition to that, we had also been spending more time together recently. Take a short break. In her hand was a box from the luxury dessert shop Findene and I had visited previously. Owen, who was tapping on the keys of the melodica, and Professor Felpetra, who just like me was also working on exam questions, were the first to react. Wow. Welcome, Professor Erica. I'm so glad that you've been coming here more often lately. Upon receiving a warm welcome from the two of them, Erica's lips curved upward slightly as she handed them the cake before coming to my side. Do you know? Compared to before, the distance between you and your fiancé has decreased a lot, said the Dark Spiritualist after rolling off, peeking at me while poking her head out from under the desk. I pretended not to hear her. How's it going? Any progress? Do you need my help? Yes, would you like to try solving this? What is it? As Erica moved closer, our arms naturally touched, but she continued to solve the problem I handed her as if nothing happened. Despite Professor Fell and Owen glancing over occasionally, she showed no hesitation. For now, I pretended not to be bothered by it and waited for Erica to solve the question. Since Erica had attended all my lectures without missing a single one, if she couldn't solve it, the other students wouldn't be able to do so either. After some time, Erica casually took the pen from my hand and jotted down the answer. That is correct. Erica nodded with satisfaction at my words. She then folded her arms and immediately offered her thoughts. The students might still find it difficult to calculate this part. There is quite a significant difference compared to ordinary magic calculation formulas. However, this is very important because many students still do not understand the difference between elemental magic and black magic. So, is this your stubbornness as a professor? Unexpectedly, Erica smiled with satisfaction at my words and replied, then emphasize on this part more clearly in the next lecture. If you outrightly say that it will be in the exam, the students will put more effort into studying. I will make sure to do that, as expected of Erica. Since she had more experience as a professor than me, the tips she had given me were quite helpful. Back when I was a student, I didn't realize this as I only needed to solve the questions. Now that I needed to create the questions for the exam, I had a lot to think about. Raising the difficulty level just enough to differentiate the grades of the students while ensuring it was solvable was no easy task. Usually, it would be more convenient to quote questions from the previous exams of the other professors in the same or similar majors, but since that is not possible for you, you'll have to work harder. Of course, there wouldn't have been any previous exams on black magic. I kept working on the task without much complaint as I was already aware of this. In the first place, I knew that I wouldn't be able to get the knowledge and answers I wanted from the other professor's questions. Let's eat first. All right. I wasn't particularly fond of desserts, but seeing that Erica made an effort to buy this, I leaned back for a moment, rubbed my eyes, and glanced at her. Without me noticing, Owen had already brought over the cake and a fork to my desk. As I slowly reached out to eat it, Erica looked around with a satisfied smile. By the way, where's Findinay? There was still a piece of cake left for Findinay. I hesitated for a moment before answering. She said she had some personal matters to attend to. Personal matters? Erica tilted her head suspiciously, but when she realized that I didn't intend to elaborate any further, she stopped asking questions. I took a small bite of the cake with the fork. The subtle sweet taste spread pleasantly in my mouth. Since she knew I didn't like overly sweet desserts, Erica must have chosen something suitable. I changed the subject while eating the cake. By the way, have you sent the letter to the Bright household? Yup. I marked it as urgent, so I received a quick reply. They asked us to come over as soon as the vacation starts. All right, I have also sent a letter to my family. This meeting was a sort of negotiation disguised as a formal meeting between the families. Still, since we had to fill the seats, I also called Darius. If we entrusted the matters of the territory to Dia, there wouldn't be any problems. While the weather at Loburn Academy was just turning chilly with the onset of autumn, an early wintry chill had already settled over North Sweden. Of course, this weather could be called autumnal in North Sweden. A family meeting? Dia's voice was filled with coldness, appropriate for such a wintry chill. Yes, it seems that Darius has finally made up his mind. Not noticing his younger sister's mood, Darius let out a broad laugh, rejoicing because of the marriage of the second son of the household. However, seeing such a sight made Dia even more annoyed. There was no way that bastard was planning to get married. Dia knew Darius very well. In other words, she knew if that were Kim Shin-woo, he would never marry Erica. With such conviction, Dia immediately sensed that he had other plans. She heard that there was a massacre in the eastern region of Marias Great Forest recently, and he had managed to end it. Perhaps at that time he felt the need for something. Perhaps there must be something he needs from the Bright household. The Bright household was always famous for its prestigious lineage of mages. It was well known that Erica Bright was an expert in light magic research and had 2 papers recorded in the Millennium Library. While her contributions were not as prominent, Erica's 2 older brothers and the head of the household were also highly regarded in magic. Certainly, they are a household with many useful connections. Even during the recent purges of King Orpheus, they naturally lowered their heads and passed through with minimal damage. At a time when households like the Zironia were struggling, they were one of the few influential households that still remained. Why is he hiding something from us? He can just tell us everything. Dia felt slightly annoyed, but the reason Darius didn't disclose everything was probably to avoid burdening them. However, an alarm was already raised in Dia's mind. I can't miss this opportunity. As the lady of the Verdi household, Dia realized that preliminary work was necessary to deal with the Bright household. And for that, Darius would play the most crucial role. Don't think of it as a usual meeting between families. You need to remain focused. You need to memorize everything I'm going to tell you about the Bright household. Since they could not leave their territory empty, Dia naturally thought that she would have to stay behind. Therefore, she had to make sure that Darius remembered and organized the information she would provide him and then hand it over to Darius. That was what she thought. However, are you really going to investigate the household Welby in-laws with now? Don't do something like that. Don't unnecessarily create embarrassing situations. There's no need to attack someone's weak point. Ever since that incident, where he had to atone for the sins of the Verdi household with Darius always disliked this kind of maneuvering. However, Dia sighed as she smacked her forehead. Being clean and righteous was good. However, wasn't this a bit foolish? Fine, you should just stay quiet. Just go and smile politely, maybe bow a bit, because I will be the one who handles the necks of the opponent. After swallowing back those words, Dia resolved herself to accompany him to this family meeting as well. It's certainly been a while since I practiced my etiquette and have smiled properly. Why don't you go and coolly impress everyone with your axe handling skills while you're at it? Well, I think that's a bit too much. Use some common sense, Dia. Seriously, what a crappy. Please donate through Audiobook Novels PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys.